How's it going, guys? Um, Today I was watching another video with Ben Shapiro. Now let me put a disclaimer out there. Um, for the most part, the things that Ben Shapiro says, I'm on board with, at least as far as baseline goes. You know, and when I say that, I mean what is what is, or at least what we know to be true as of this time and place in medical history. It is what it is. That's not to say that there won't be things that are discovered in the future. That is not to say that everything is not at a place where it can be a thought that evolves. But for what we know about science and medicine, it is what it is right now. And um, there's no point in trying to disagree with certain aspects. Having said that, Ben Shapiro took this stance when he was in an argument with a transgender person, and the argument was, if we take a person that has schizophrenia, we do not tell them that their delusions are true. We don't tell them that their hallucinations are real. We treat them with medicine, and that's true. That is true. But where he's messing up is he's using the broad strokes, easy way of making an analogy to make his point. Now, granted, there's far more to it, and I'm sure he knows that. But as far as schizophrenia in the United States today, there are several medications which can mitigate, if not completely, do away with delusions, hallucinations, things like that. As far as treatment for body dysphoria, gender dysphoria, it's almost non-existent. So, ultimately, what medicine um, is a scientific venture that is made its business making life easier for people, health-wise, mental health-wise. The end game is for people to be comfortable, free of disease, free of pain. All right. And so, when dealing with something that you can argue if you want to about whether or not body dysphoria, gender dysphoria is a mental condition. You can argue all you want about that. The fact is that is what's happening. It's a medical condition. As far as there are probably millions of medical conditions that are currently in existence that we don't understand. That's not to say that having a condition is making you a lesser person. That's don't. What I'm saying is don't attach these negative connotations to what I'm saying, because I'm not. So if you're attaching negative connotations, it's because you are doing it. And so when it comes to the transgender topic, what it amounts to is, if the aim is to create a relief of any kind for someone experiencing this, there's medical evidence, and this is stated in journals. This is it's out there. You can go look for it. People who are experiencing gender dysmorphia, body dysmorphia, when they are in a loving, understanding, open-minded environment, they tend to thrive. And ultimately, what it comes down to is, if the treatment for such a thing is effectively, let's treat these people with respect. Let's treat them like they're people that are dealing with something that is already difficult. And as I said in my earlier video, taking a stance against that, whether or not be religious, moral, whatever it is, there have been also medical studies that show that psychologically, people who are overly zealous, religious fire and brimstone types, are also suffering from um, shit. I don't remember exactly what the condition is called, but that in itself is also considered by some to be a psychological condition. So if if by being accepting, if being accepting is a as a treatment that is accepted by the people that are dealing with this, standing on any kind of moral high ground, it's irrelevant. Now, the one thing I have a problem with, this is the reason I'm not an overly religious I'm not even a religious person. I am a personally spiritual person. But the reason I'm not a religious person is because from what I've seen in history, religion and the morality attached to it is usually what is at the core of many conflicts, many disagreements that end up with the loss of human life. So, what it amounts to is on a day-to-day basis, the only people that really need to take a stance, like Ben Shapiro is taking, are medical professionals. Like I stated in another video, if you are a biological male, you identify as a female, but you develop testicular cancer, well, your medical doctor doesn't have time to, try to phrase things so it's more palatable for you. Your doctor is concerned with saving your life, and that's what they're supposed to do. And we shouldn't be trying to skew and change what their directives are. So, unless you're a medical professional taking a stance against the transgender movement by refusing to refer to them in the pronoun which they are comfortable, you're just a fucking prick, and that is what it is. Unless you are a medical professional. And the thing is, if say you're a religious person, an overly religious person, and somebody comes into your house, and say you think pornography is ridiculous, you say it's a sin against God. People come into your house and they know that they're not going to bring this up or do this. They make a choice to, when they're in your house, when they're dealing with you, they make the choice to adhere to your guidelines religiously, because one, they're in your house. It's nobody's business to go into somebody else's house and somebody else's home and start, pushing buttons. And everyone has a right to live comfortably. Now, if you take that same attitude, everyone has a right to live comfortably, and you're not a medical professional, and you're saying, I will not refer to these people with their preferred pronouns because, for moral reasons or scientific reasons. If you're not a scientist, or, you're not God himself, then really you're just taking a stance to be a prick, And let's be very clear here. The reason people with body dysphoria, gender dysphoria, are having a hard time, it's not because of how they feel about themselves. What they're doing is they're having an internal dialogue about how other people are going to be, they're going to be, they're going to be pieces of shit. They're going to, sexist, they're going to be, they're just going to take a negative stance, and they're going to inflict that on these people. And it's not them that's feeling that way. It is society's values that have got us to this point, and that's what they're anticipating in their head. If you can make the argument that if society was more accepting, more woke, more whatever the hell you want to call it, more interested in everybody's day-to-day right to live without, judgment, free of, trouble, and trials and tribulations, then there would be no internal dialogue like that. But unfortunately, we're living in a time where where people are basically, hypocritical sacks of shit, where they say, I'm standing on moral high ground, I feel like this is wrong, like homosexuality, gay marriage, I'm standing on moral high grounds. You're not God, you're not a doctor, and you're not a gay person. And see, the beauty of not being in that situation is, if you choose to not partake in that, like Ben Shapiro, his religion dictates that, gay marriage is a sin. So it is his choice to not participate in that. But as far as inflicting your philosophy, ideals on other people, the question becomes, who the fuck are you that you think that you are in the right to go and make people's lives harder based on your moral understanding. And which, by the way, is always kind of cute in my mind, because the people that take a moral stance against homosexuality are the same people that are fucking their 13-year-old babysitters and, murdering children. Most of the people taking religious stances, moral stances, are far from, moral. So, what it amounts to is, it's a very easy way to take somebody who's already struggling, and keep in mind, like I said, they're not struggling because they're at odds with themselves. They're struggling because they know that society is at odds with them most of the time. In the situation when it comes to transgender, the 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 way society deals with people like this usually leads to suicide. It's usually, in the cases where suicide has happened, it's usually a result of people who are not open-minded, people who are extremely judgmental, people who are just, they don't have a horse in the race, but then they put a horse in the race. What it comes down to is, day to day, everybody has a right to live, be happy, be free of bullshit. And unless you're a medical doctor or God himself, you have no reason to stand against somebody being called whatever pronoun they want to be called. I've said it before in my videos, when you take this stance, basically, you do this every day. When you meet somebody and they say, "Hi, my name is Dave. Hi, my name is Thomas." Now, taking a stance against the transgender community would be like taking a stance against people for having their own names. Like, I want everyone to be called Tom, so I'm going to call everyone Tom. Everyone's going to look at you like you're a fucking idiot. If you're willing to address people by the name that they've been given, you are showing that you are, willing to exercise a certain amount of the social contract. That same social contract is what we're talking about when it comes to the transgender movement. You are addressing somebody by the pronoun that they choose to be called by. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't create a cancerous growth on your head. When you do this, all it does is make somebody else's life easier, and they're already having it harder than you. And I say that because, chances are they have it harder than you. You may have a problem where you can't pay your bills, and, like, your lack of money is a stress. They are waking up at odds with themselves because of what they know society is capable of every single day. They go to sleep with it. They live with it from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. You can make some more money, pay your bills. Struggling. I'm not a big fan of, quantifying pain for the sake of measurement, but at a certain point, you have to, do that when you're dealing with people who are taking a stance, and for no other reason other than they just don't want to do something. So that's what I have to say in regards to Ben Shapiro. The thing is, we don't know with medicine, with psychological medicine, we don't know what. There's probably a million, like I said, there's probably a million conditions that are out there that have not yet been identified. As far as where we are in medical science, we are at a place where we are constantly making breakthroughs. So to cement ourselves into a certain set of ideals, opinions, in a field which is constantly growing is really an archaic kind of stance. So basically, if you meet somebody and it is a biological male identifying as female, they want to be called a female, then address them as such. It makes their life easier, and it affects you not at all. If you're just trying to take a stance, I would invite you, before you take a stance on a transgender person's right to be addressed however they like, that you scrub your life for moral ambiguity. If you are currently rationalizing chaining up a child in your basement, but then you're taking a stance on somebody who is wanting to be addressed as a female, then not only are you a hypocrite, but you're also a fucking idiot. And if you have a child chained up in your basement, you kind of deserve to be beat to death with shoes. Then that's what this all comes down to is, taking a stance, that, oh, well, this is what science says, this is what medicine says. Who gives a shit what science, medicine says? That what this has to do with is not the medical definitions of anything. This has to do with people's right to exist without, people inflicting their will on somebody. Like I myself, people don't inflict their will on me. They don't try to make me address. They don't make me try to see the world like they do, because they know it's not going to work. And the people that have challenged me on that have found that it's not so easy a task. And so what happens is they leave me alone. You should not have to be bested in a challenge to be allowed to live unimpeded, with your happiness unimpeded. And that's basically what it comes down to. Ben Shapiro is not a medical doctor, and his stance on things is morally based on the Judeo-Christian beliefs, which are, one can make the argument that those are archaic beliefs in themselves, but then again, it depends on your interpretation of religious doctrine. And my interpretation of religious doctrine is, in a time and place when there was no radio, TV, the best way to get people to treat each other with respect and love was to tell stories. Stories have survived hundreds and thousands of years, and somebody came up with an ultimate story that would allow for people to believe that if they were sacks of shit in life, there would be an ultimate judgment. There's no better way to get people to be good to one another than the idea of faith. And well, just in my opinion, most of the people that are touting themselves as Christians, are usually, in my opinion, the last to exemplify Christian ideals, which is love, forgiveness, and understanding. So yeah, take whatever stance you want, but just know that you have the freedom to do that. But just know that your freedom to do that is, if it impedes somebody else's freedom to live happily, then you are effectively a hypocrite and a piece of shit. Just when people are already torturing themselves based on what they believe society is going to do as far as interact with them, they don't need anybody else playing the active role. People with body dysphoria, gender dysphoria, are already having a tough time, and that tough time is pretty much based solely in what they know about society, and they're not wrong. So don't compound it. Help to alleviate it. Once again, like I've said before, calling someone by their preferred pronoun does not create a cancerous lump on your head. It doesn't put a 200-pound rock on your back. It allows for somebody else to live happily, right? And if you look at it as like a mental condition, if the treatment is simply allowing somebody to live the way they choose to live, address them how they want to be addressed, do it. Unless, like I said, you're a medical doctor or a professional who's you have there's a direct issue with you as, like I said, a medical doctor, then that's one thing, but even at that, the people that have this condition, they're not thinking that the people that are transgender, if they were born a biological male, they do not believe that they have transformed into a female overnight. They are choosing to identify this way. They are not ignorant of the science. They are trying to make a choice to make their lives easier. Life is already hard. Don't be the asshole to make somebody else's life harder. Everybody dealing with this is well aware of what's going on. They've done their research. They've looked into it. They're much more knowledgeable than you are in regards to what's going on with them. So unless you have a very good medical reason for taking that stance, you have no grounds to take the stance. If you're willing to call somebody you just meet by their given name, then you are showing that you are willing to, you know, address people how they are wanting to be addressed, and that's basically it. Um, the 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 connection with schizophrenia is on the surface. It looks like it makes sense, but when you cut it up, it's really two different things, and this is why we can't take two different things and put them together and we draw parallels, because two different things are obviously two different things, and the parallels will stop at a certain point. And it's when those parallels stop that we get into the exact reasons why they're not the same, and the exact reasons why we can't just put them right next to each other. Like, I personally, myself, I believe that body dysphoria, gender dysphoria is a mental condition. But to say that that is a mental condition that is wrong, I don't know that. I don't know that that is not the way that, if you're a religious person, let's put it this way, you either have to acknowledge that God makes mistakes, in which case he's not all powerful, or you have to acknowledge that God intended to design people this way, in which case God's not wrong. So which is it? Either way, taking a stance against it makes you a fucking ignorant prick, no matter what stance you take on this. And like I said, if you take a stance that it's a mental condition, well, there are several mental conditions out there. There are things that people have no idea about. You know, if you want to worry yourself, you want to stand on moral high grounds. Why don't you stand on the moral high ground in regards to organizations like NAMBLA? Why don't you take a stance regarding priests that are allowed to continue to hold service while they have charges for child molestation? Take a stance where you can do some real good. Don't pick on people who are already having a tough time, who already feel alienated, who are already on the edge. Like, this is it. It doesn't take a strong person to start shit with somebody who's already having a tough time. If you want to take a stance against someone like me. Like, that's brave. Say, oh well, in the Bible it says this. In the Bible it says a lot of fucking things. I can guarantee. If you give me 48 hours, any person that challenges me on this, I can find something in the Bible that would, in a roundabout way, if not directly, show you to be a sinner and morally corrupt. There's no reason to chop this up. There's no reason to argue about it. People want to be treated a certain way. Fucking treat them that way. Let them get on with their life and have a happy life. Everyone deserves a happy life. And, like, it baffles me that people are still trying to take stands and they're like, well, I'm a intellectual and this is why I'm doing this. Who gives a fuck? Nobody cares that you're an intellectual. How many times in your life as an intellectual have you been like, well, that's technically not correct? And someone's like, guess what? I got a crown for you and a cake. You're the fucking king of the world. They don't do that. Nobody fucking cares. You want to be intellectual? Use your intellect to do things for good, not to alienate people who are already having a tough time. There's no challenge in that. You don't look like a big man, a big fucking huge person. You don't look like a fucking hero when you fucking pick on people who are already having a tough time and are marginalized. If you want to show real strength, try showing love and compassion, even if your social circles don't agree with it. That's courage. To be good to people in spite of what's going on around you. And that's why I don't care what people think of me. If my friend said to me like, oh dude, I can't believe you addressed that person as a female, that's clearly a male, I would turn around and I'd be like, we're gonna have a little fucking talk real quick and I'm gonna tell you why you're fucking stupid. And at the end of it, fucking just be glad if I didn't bop you on the head. There's no fucking reason for it. There are doctors out there that are taking stances politically rather than medically. This is dangerous. There should not be a huge group of people that are making somebody else's life a matter by which they should make a career out of opposing it. That is the most chicken shit, cowardly fucking thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Treat people the way you want to be treated. you have the right and the freedom to live happily, everybody else does too. And you impeding that, even on the smallest scale, makes you part of the problem, not the solution. I apologize if I jumped around a little bit on this, but I'm just kind of winging these videos. So you know, yeah. So, and as always, don't like, don't subscribe. Just fucking be good to another. It's really not that hard, Like, it's really not that hard. You just gotta let people be the way they want to be. You know, start locally. You don't have to change the world. Be good to the people around you. You don't have to be good to the entire world. Just start with the people around you and let it kind of expand. You know, I feel like people get this idea that they can change the world with their ideas, but most of the people I know, they want to say, "Oh, Black Lives Matter," homosexuality, homosexual marriage. They want all these people to have equality, but they don't treat the people in their lives all that well. Before you go inflicting your views on other people, make sure that you are covered on all aspects. And the reason I say that is because most people that would, go tout, you know, their ignorant bullshit, there's a very high chance that there's already something in your life that you should be working on instead of, bringing down somebody else. So rather than bring down somebody else, just shut your ignorant mouth and try to polish your life up real good. Life is difficult. If you've got the time to take a stance against somebody who's transgender, then that shows you've got too much time on your hands. You're living a pretty good life if that's your biggest problem. So I invite you to go fuck yourself at that point. Get yourself into something where you have a real problem to deal with. You know what I mean? Don't go starting shit with people who already have a tough time. Don't be the kid on the playground that picks on the kid that is keeping to themselves and not bothering anybody. Yeah. So that just about does it. Once again, I'm always willing to have a conversation. I'm always willing to discuss this. But if you're just going to take a stance against me and disagree with me because you just don't like what I'm saying, well, I remind you, you're free to disagree with me. Just do it quietly.